Hello, this is Kevin with Banggood Inc. And today we're going to take a look at column properties, a little bit more detailed than our last video, that we're going to get into when you might want to suppress columns, repeat columns, also take a look at numbers and kind of controlling how the numbers are displayed and so forth. So let's get started. I'm going to go back into the same report we we're just modifying in the prior video. So I'm going to go into Edit. So here we are. So as we're looking at this data already has some lines that are being suppressed by default. So looking at this, you'll see that the job, well, all these vendors or all these invoices are associated with that one job. Same thing over here at vendor, there's just not near as many that you can see that this vendor has one invoice, that vendor has one invoice, that vendor has two invoices, so on and so forth, two invoices, and it's basically just suppressing that heading and only showing it once. So by default, some of the different fields, especially job and vendors and some of those, it seems like suppress the data by default. In a report, I think some of that looks better. So the way I know whether I'm going to suppress or repeat it is kind of what somebody's doing with the report, I think. If somebody's looking at the report, I think this is more appealing because I can see that job versus that job at a quick glance. If that job was down on every single line here, it would take my eye more to try to focus and find where that next job was coming up or where the end of this job was, that type of thing. So by suppressing the job so it doesn't show up many times, or the vendor, makes them easier to read. So a lot of times if somebody's doing a report where I'm printing it out, looking at it on the screen, something of that nature, I think suppressing things make a lot of sense. If you're doing something like an export to Excel, maybe you've got something that you want to upload a positive pay report to a bank of, here's all the checks that we ran through AP and so forth. This wouldn't work for those because I don't want one line for a job, because theoretically each one of these would be imported into that other system, and each one of these would need to know what job they correspond with. So a lot of time when we're exporting data to other places, we don't want to suppress that. We want to show on every single line. The way you control this is going up to the column. Matter of fact, I'm not right. I need to be in the define. And what was I going to do that on? That is going to be the vendor, let's say. So as I go to the drop down there, and let's say that I want to look at my column properties. We looked at this earlier for changing the name of the column. But then here's the value suppression. So right now it's saying suppressed. And if you look at the little picture here, it kind of shows, one something that could have many showing up below it, versus this has the same thing on every single line. So in this example, I'm going to say repeat. I'm going to go back and do the exact same thing for the job. And now when I go to my define to look at it again, you notice that this looks quite a bit different just because it's repeating the job and the vendor information on every single invoice we've got now. So if you look through there, there's all that particular job. That's where I could see these couple vendors that had, multiple invoices. I see the vendor showing up each time. So a lot of time, if you're exporting it to some other system that's going to upload this data, you don't want to do the suppress. So kind of be careful with that, because by default, some of those columns will suppress just to make them look a little cleaner when you're looking at them and so forth. The other thing I wanted to take a look at in this one is the numbers. Sometimes people want decimal places, sometimes they don't want decimal places. Sometimes I want commas in them because commas might be easier to read for readability and so forth. So let's take a look at that a little bit. We're going to go back into, let's say, the invoice amount this time in column properties and data format. So under data format then is where we can say I want to override whatever the default is. So to kind of give me a chance to say, how do I want to display it? So if I just want to say currency, that'll automatically set up a a certain look, or if I just want to say a number and could control some of it. So these are more of kind of a style or something of that nature of how that number is formatted. So if I leave it at number at the moment, I can control what happens to the negative numbers. So if I wanted it in red, within parentheses or something of that nature, I might go ahead and say parentheses in a red, maybe just straight parentheses. Maybe the negative would be actually red in this case. Maybe just have the minus in front of it. Some of those type of things kind of control how that would show up. And then how many decimal places. So if I wanted, no decimal places, or to round it off to $1 or something of that nature. And then whether or not I want like the thousand separator and so forth. If I look at currency, is another pretty common one. Currency gives me a little bit more choices because I can tell it, what do I want for my currency symbol if I want a currency symbol. Same thing for my negative, same thing for my decimal places, same thing for the separator. So currency only adds, if I want to go ahead and put some sort of a currency symbol on in front of the number. And then percentages are probably pretty popular and so forth also. So same type of thing, just really controlling. If it's negative, how does it show up? And 0 decimal places and, my thousand separator again. If something's spelling out a month name, you can tell it to abbreviate it or the full month name. So that kind of comes in handy sometimes if you're doing things that have to do with months or something of that nature being displayed on the report somewhere. So in my example, I want to just pick a number, and maybe I want, that in red and a parenthesis or the number in front of it. And let's just say 0 decimal places is fine. I don't want to use thousand separator. So if we go back up to the refine, you notice that now I've got all my numbers are without decimal places, since I said a whole number, and each one's got my thousand separator in the appropriate spot to make them easy to read, at least for my invoice amounts. So I'm going to go back and do the same thing maybe for my total paid and billed there. So let's do the same thing with total paid. So we just go ahead and just run through. We're going to override what you're doing currently. Let's say we said that. Let's say 0, 1,000. Then if I go back to my open amount field, column property starts off on the same tab automatically, since that's what I had open last. And all we should have to do is just check the box. And I think I also changed that. So that's basically how you control whether or not some of these columns repeat values or suppress them, and then also how to control the numbers in their format. Thanks for watching.